I have always had a sense of being invisible, just kind of there, you know, the kind of person no one really notices until something goes wrong. But now, I'm the one everyone will notice. I'm Mackenzie Thompson, 28 years old, and my family's life is about to change forever. But don't feel sorry for me. This is my choice. I've been waiting for this day for far too long. The room is silent now, but it wasn't always this way. There was a time when the Thompson name meant something. People respected us. My father, David Thompson, the civil engineer who built the roads, bridges, and homes that kept this city running, he was a giant in the eyes of so many. And then there's my mother, Karen, a woman whose social grace was admired by everyone in the neighborhood. But behind the polished smiles and the perfectly manicured lawns, things were never as they seemed. You'll never be good enough. Mackenzie, why can't you be more like Connor? I can still hear my mother's voice in my head, the sharpness of it cutting deeper than any insult. And the worst part, she was right. At least, that's what I believed for years. Connor, my older brother, was everything they wanted in a child. Athletic, successful, popular, a rising star in business with his perfect suit, perfect smile, and that smug look in his eyes. Meanwhile, I was just me, stumbling through life, trying to figure out what I was supposed to be, never quite hitting the mark. But that wasn't the worst of it. No. The worst part was how easily they pushed me aside, how they kept me small, how every achievement I had was met with their apathy, while Connor's failures were treated like minor blips on the radar. It was clear my success was never going to be enough. My efforts would always be overshadowed by the golden child. But the thing is, I've learned, over the years, that being overlooked doesn't have to be the end of the story. And this right now is where my story truly begins. The incident. I thought maybe it was all in my head. You know, the feeling of being constantly dismissed, belittled. But one moment, just one moment, made everything click into place. It was Christmas. The family reunion at my Aunt Laura's house. I don't even know why I went. I knew what I'd find there. I knew I'd just be another part of the background, marginalized, unnoticed. Nothing more than a decoration on the table. But this time, things were different. I had brought gifts, thoughtful, personal gifts, gifts that meant something to me. For my mother, I had framed a restored photograph of her and my grandmother from the 1980s, before everything fell apart. For Connor, I had found vintage blueprints of the first skyscraper in our city, something he had always admired as a kid. And for Aunt Laura, I had a custom engraved silver pen for her desk to congratulate her on her recent promotion. I thought I'd done something meaningful, but when I walked in, I felt it immediately. The judgment, the coldness. My mother looked at me like I was a stranger. My father barely acknowledged my presence, his attention focused solely on Connor, as usual. And then I saw the look on Aunt Laura's face as she opened my gift. Her eyes flicked to me with that all-too-familiar disappointment, before she forced a smile. "Thanks, Mackenzie, but you really shouldn't have. It's too much," she said, her voice too sweet to be sincere. And in that moment, I realized something. I realized that no matter how hard I tried, I would never be enough. I would never get their approval, their recognition. They would always see me as the outcast, the one who wasn't cut from the same cloth as Connor. The moment of clarity. It wasn't just the gifts that did it. It was the entire atmosphere. The way my family ignored me. The way they treated me like I was a footnote in their perfect lives. Connor was the center of attention, as usual, bragging about his promotions and his latest deals at work. My parents fawned over him, praising him for everything: his success, his hard work, his so-called achievements. Meanwhile, I sat there, quietly watching, feeling like a ghost. I watched as my mother's cold eyes shifted to me when she thought no one was looking, her disappointment clear. And then it hit me. The truth I had buried for years. They had never cared about me. They'd always dismissed me. I was never going to fit into their version of the perfect family. I was never going to be good enough for them. And I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep playing along like I didn't see it. The way they treated me, the way they had been treating me my entire life. Enough, I whispered under my breath. Enough. It was time. It was time to stop being the good little daughter, the one who quietly accepted their judgment. Time to stop hoping for something that would never come. If they weren't going to acknowledge my worth, I would make them. I would make them see me. And I would make them pay for every moment they made me feel small. The plan begins. I didn't know exactly how to do it yet, but I would figure it out. And when the time came, they wouldn't see it coming. The whole damn family would be shocked. They would understand that I had learned their game, and I would play it better than any of them. But first, I needed something that would shift the power dynamic, something that would level the playing field. I needed leverage. And that's when I remembered something that had been right under my nose the entire time. My father's business. The finances he had so carefully kept hidden. There was more to this family's fortune than they had ever let on. And I was about to find it. The phone buzzed. It was a text from my friend Kyle, a lawyer who had always looked out for me in ways no one else had. The message was simple, but it sent a chill down my spine. I found something. You're going to want to see this. I didn't know what it was yet, but I had a feeling this was the key, the piece of the puzzle that would finally tip the scales in my favor. And as I stared at the message, I felt the weight of everything shifting. This was my moment. The plan had started, and there was no turning back now. This is just the beginning, I muttered, a cold smile creeping onto my face. But what was waiting for me on the other side, only time would tell. And trust me, they weren't going to like what came next. The night of the family reunion is still fresh in my mind. The sting of the disappointment from my mother's eyes, the coldness in Aunt Laura's forced smile. Everything was exactly as I had feared. But there was something new in me, something I hadn't realized was there until now, the burning need for change. And it was time to make that happen. The thing is, when you've been treated like you're invisible, it's hard to even recognize the weight of your own existence. For years, I played the role of the overlooked daughter, the one who tried too hard to fit in, to please, to be someone I thought they wanted. But that night, that was the moment it all clicked. I didn't need them. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need to fit into their perfect little world anymore. I had my own world now. And it was time to take it back. The realization. By the time I got home from the reunion, the weight of everything was pressing on me. My mind was racing. The flicker of anger still burning. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat by the kitchen table with the cold light of the fridge flickering above me, staring at my phone screen. The message from Kyle was still there, waiting for me. I had to admit part of me had been hoping Kyle would find something. After all, he was the one person who saw me for who I really was, not the failure my family seemed to think I was. I didn't waste any time. I dialed his number, my hands trembling slightly. But not from fear, no. It was anticipation. I was finally on the edge of something, and there was no going back now. Kyle's warning. Mackenzie Kyle's voice came through the phone, cool and calm, but I could hear the concern behind it. Yeah, it's me. What did you find? I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. I had been waiting for this moment, but now that it was here, I felt like I could hardly breathe. There was a pause on the other end. Then, finally, Kyle spoke again. I found a set of financial records, bank statements, Transactions. There's something big here. Mackenzie. Something your father has been hiding for years. I felt a chill run down my spine. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment I had known deep down would come. The truth about my family, about everything they had built, was starting to unravel. What kind of transactions? I forced the words out, feeling a little sick with excitement. Large sums of money transferred between accounts. It's a mess, but it's clear your dad has been funneling money, hiding assets. I don't know exactly how deep it goes, but you might want to take a closer look at these records. The game begins. I hung up the phone, my mind racing. My father had always been careful with his money, always controlling, always meticulous. But this was different. This wasn't just a slip-up or a mistake. This was deliberate. This was something I could use. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the cold, harsh light of the kitchen. My hands were shaking. But this time, it wasn't out of fear. It was adrenaline. I was going to make them see me. I was going to make them regret how they'd treated me all these years. But this wasn't going to be easy. It couldn't be. If it was, it wouldn't be worth it. My family, especially my father, had been playing this game for years. He knew how to hide things, how to keep his reputation spotless. But no one was perfect, not even him. Setting the trap. I didn't waste any time. I started going through the documents Kyle sent me. It took hours, but I was determined. I had to understand the full scope of this before I could make my next move. As I sifted through the numbers, the names, the dates, it all started to make sense. This wasn't just about money. This was about power. My father had been building his empire on the backs of people like me, people he thought would never have the courage to stand up. And then I found it. One name, one transaction that stood out among the rest. It was the key, the point of leverage I needed. If I could prove that my father had used the family business to cover up illegal dealings, I could take everything he had built away from him. I would tear his world apart, piece by piece. The plan comes together. Over the next few days, I pulled the pieces together. I wasn't going to just confront my father. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of thinking he could intimidate me. No, I was going to strike first. I was going to use the law, use the evidence, to make sure that when he realized what I was doing, it would be too late to stop me. I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone who understood the law, someone who could help me cover my tracks. Kyle was my first call. He agreed to help me go through everything and set up the strategy. The pieces were falling into place, and there was no turning back now. But something inside me, something deep down, was still unsure. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. And even if I succeeded, would it be enough? Would I feel the weight of all the years of hurt lifted off my shoulders? Or would I simply be left with more empty space where my family used to be? The calm before the storm. The days passed, each one bringing me closer to the moment when I would confront them. But as I stood at the edge of this plan, I felt something I hadn't expected, a tinge of doubt. Was I doing the right thing? Was revenge the answer? Or was I just continuing the cycle of hurt that had kept me trapped all these years? I spent the night alone, staring at the blueprint of my plan. But the answer never came. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I was finally taking control. For the first time in my life, I was no longer the victim. I was the one who would decide the outcome. The phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Kyle. It was a text from Connor. The message was short, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. I know what you're planning, and I don't think you want to go down that road. My heart skipped a beat. How did he know was someone watching me? What was he going to do? I stared at the message, my thoughts racing. This wasn't just about family secrets anymore. This was about something much bigger. And now, I had to decide, do I confront Connor, or do I push forward with my plan and risk everything? I didn't have time to think. I had to act. And fast. The message from Connor sat on my phone screen, burning through me with an intensity I couldn't shake. I know what you're planning, and I don't think you want to go down that road. How did he know I hadn't told anyone? Not even Kyle. I thought I'd been careful, that I was in control. But now, it seemed like everything I was working toward could come crashing down at any moment. I paced my small apartment, my heart thumping in my chest. This wasn't just about some petty family squabble anymore. Connor knew something. He was onto me. And he was warning me, or threatening me. I couldn't decide. The confrontation looms. I sat down at my kitchen table, staring at the phone in my hand. The blue glow of the screen felt like it was closing in on me, amplifying the quiet hum of my apartment. The silence was suffocating. My mind raced through the possible consequences of Connor knowing what I was planning. Had he found out through my father's company? Did he have someone watching me? I couldn't take the chance that he might be one step ahead of me. The truth was, I had been so focused on getting revenge, on taking back what had always been denied to me, that I hadn't stopped to think about how far I was willing to go. And now, with this message, it felt like everything I had worked for was at risk. I didn't want to back down. Not now. Not after everything I had learned, everything I had uncovered. But I also knew that if I didn't act quickly, if I didn't keep my cards close to my chest, I could lose everything. I grabbed my phone and called Kyle. Kyle's advice. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Finally, Kyle's voice came through, calm but laced with concern. Mackenzie, what's going on? I didn't waste time on small talk. I jumped straight to it. Connor knows. Somehow, he knows what I'm planning. There was a pause on the other end, the silence stretching out as I waited for his response. Finally, Kyle spoke, his voice quiet and measured. Okay, listen to me. You need to be careful. If he's onto you, that means someone in your family has been watching you. They've been keeping tabs. I closed my eyes, pressing my hand against my forehead. The idea of my family, my own flesh and blood, betraying me like this sent a wave of disgust through me. But it also fueled the fire within me. If they thought they could stop me, they were sorely mistaken. I know. I just don't know how much he knows. What should I do? You need to confront him. Don't give him the upper hand. But don't let him get too close, either. I'll help you. We can figure out how to turn this to your advantage. I let out a shaky breath. Confronting Connor. That was a risk, but it was one I couldn't avoid. He was the key to everything. If I could control him, then I controlled the game. All right, I'll do it. The strategy shifts. The next few days were a blur of frantic planning. I kept my head down at work, pretending everything was normal, pretending my life wasn't about to explode. But my mind never stopped. Every moment was spent thinking about the next step, about how I would face Connor. I couldn't trust him, and I certainly couldn't let him derail everything I had set in motion. I knew what I had to do. I needed to confront him on my terms, not his. I needed to be prepared for whatever he threw at me, and I needed to have the upper hand. The moment I showed any weakness, he would exploit it. He would do what he always did, manipulate me, belittle me, make me feel small. But this time, I wasn't going to let that happen. I had the truth on my side, and I wasn't afraid to use it. The meeting. The message came in the middle of the afternoon. Connor wanted to meet. My stomach tightened, but I didn't hesitate. I agreed to meet him at a cafe near the park where we used to go as kids. It was public, neutral ground. I couldn't trust him, not in private. I arrived early, sitting at a corner table, my hands sweating slightly as I gripped the cup of coffee in front of me. I had rehearsed every word I would say, every look I would give him. But no matter how much I prepared, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I had a gut feeling that Connor was playing a game of his own, one I wasn't privy to. When he finally walked in, I saw the smug look on his face that I knew all too well. He was wearing his usual expensive suit, his hair neatly combed back, like he had just stepped out of a boardroom. The old Connor, the one who always had it all together, always in control. But there was something different in his eyes, something I couldn't quite place. He walked over, a little too confident. He sat down across from me without waiting for an invitation, as if he owned the place, the same way he always did with me. "So, Mackenzie," he said, leaning back in his chair, "you've been busy, haven't you?" His voice was smooth, like he was trying to provoke me, to get me to react. But I held my ground. I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. "What do you mean?" I replied, keeping my tone level. "I know what you're doing," he said, his eyes narrowing. "And I know why. It's funny, isn't it, all these years? You've been trying so hard to prove yourself, to earn our approval. And now, you think you can take us down." His words were sharp, and they cut deep. I could feel my pulse quicken. But I didn't let it show. I wasn't going to let him get to me. The twist. Connor's words hung in the air, thick with tension. I knew he wasn't just speaking out of pride, there was something else, something he wasn't saying. Then, as if on cue, he leaned forward and lowered his voice. "You're not the only one with secrets, Mackenzie." My heart stopped. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. What the hell was he talking about? "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I know about the records you've been looking at, the ones you think you've found everything in. But what you don't know is, I've already dealt with them." My blood ran cold. The pieces clicked together, and the weight of what he was saying sank in. Connor wasn't just playing defense. He was 2 steps ahead of me, and now I had no idea how to respond. "You think you've won, Mackenzie? But you have no idea what you're up against." Connor's words echoed in my mind as I sat there, frozen. My heart pounded in my chest, every beat heavy with the weight of his threat. I had prepared myself for a fight, but this was more than I had bargained for. I could see it in his eyes. Now he wasn't just the golden child. He was someone who had been playing this game longer than I had. I stared at him, my hand tightening around the coffee cup in front of me. My mind raced, piecing together the fragments of his words, trying to make sense of them. He was right about one thing. He knew exactly what I was planning. But what else did he know? What had he done that I hadn't anticipated? The trap closes. I didn't respond immediately. The silence between us stretched thin, suffocating, but I wasn't about to let Connor see that he had rattled me. No, he had underestimated me before, and he was doing it again. I leaned forward, placing my coffee cup gently on the table, my gaze fixed on him. "What exactly do you think you know, Connor?" I asked, my voice steady, but I could feel the cold sweat starting to bead on my skin. He smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of his lips. He wasn't rushing, wasn't angry. He was in control, and that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "I know you've been digging into Dad's finances. I know what you think you've found, but you don't know the half of it." My stomach twisted. What had he done? I had to know. But I couldn't let him see how much this was getting to me. The control was slipping from my hands, and I was beginning to feel it, like a flood of cold water rising higher and higher. If I let him speak freely, I might lose everything. "What are you talking about?" I asked, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "You really think Dad is hiding everything? That's cute, Mackenzie. But let me tell you something, you're not the only one who's been playing the game. I leaned back in my chair, trying to make sense of it. Was he bluffing, or had he really done something to protect himself? To protect my father's empire? The pieces weren't fitting together the way I thought they would. A new game. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. I had been so sure of myself, so certain that I was on the right track. But now, every move I made felt like it was being countered before I even had a chance to execute it. What was my next step? How did I move forward without giving him the upper hand? Connor sat there, watching me carefully. It was like he was reading my thoughts, anticipating every move. This wasn't the brother I had known. This wasn't the man who used to be my closest rival for attention. This was someone else entirely, a man who had been playing a much bigger game than I ever could have imagined. I don't need your approval, Connor, and I don't need Dad's, I said, trying to project as much confidence as I could. But I'm going to find out the truth, no matter what it takes. The words were barely out of my mouth when I felt a shift in the air. Something heavy, something dangerous. The smile on Connor's face faltered for just a moment, an almost imperceptible twitch, but it was enough to make my heart skip a beat. Was he hiding something? You'll find out the truth. All right, he said, his voice low now, almost a whisper. But be careful what you wish for, Mackenzie, because when the truth comes out, it's not just going to hurt Dad, it's going to hurt you too. That was it. The moment everything changed. The realization that whatever game Connor was playing, I was not prepared for it. He wasn't just protecting my father's empire. He was protecting something much darker, and I was about to walk right into it. The key to everything. I spent the next few hours in a daze. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. It was clear that Connor was hiding something, but what? My thoughts kept racing back to the message Kyle had sent me, the financial records that had first pointed me in this direction. It didn't add up. Connor knew too much. He had to have access to the same documents, the same files. But how? And why hadn't I seen it earlier? What was he really hiding from me? I wasn't about to sit back and wait for him to make the next move. No. I had to act first, to control the narrative. I had been playing his game, following the rules he had set, but I had to change that. I had to rewrite the rules. I needed to find the missing piece that would expose him for what he was. So I did what any smart person would do. I called Kyle. We need to go through everything again. I missed something, I said as soon as he picked up. Connor knows too much. I don't think this is just about Dad anymore. There's something bigger at play here, and I need to find it. Kyle's voice came through, calm but concerned. What do you mean, Mackenzie? I think Connor is involved in this. I think he's been hiding something from me, something that could change everything. I could hear the rustling of papers on the other end of the line as Kyle processed what I said. After a long pause, he spoke again, his voice more serious now. All right, let's go through everything. If Connor is involved, we need to figure out what game he's playing. But Mackenzie, be careful. You're not just digging into your father's business anymore. You're digging into a much darker side of this family. And it's not going to end well if you're not careful. I didn't care. Not anymore. My entire life had been a lie. My family had lied to me, manipulated me, used me. And now, I was done being the scapegoat. I was done playing small. This time, I was going to take control. The secret revealed. I arrived at Kyle's office an hour later, and we got to work. We pored over the documents again, line by line, looking for anything I might have missed. It was slow, grueling work. But then, about 2 hours in, I saw it. A transaction, small, unassuming, but it was there. This is it, I whispered, my fingers shaking as I pointed to the screen. This is what Connor didn't want me to find. The piece I had been looking for, the key to everything. And now, the stakes had been raised higher than ever. But I was ready. I had to be. My heart raced in my chest as Connor stepped into the room, his face unreadable. The door slammed shut behind him with a finality that made me feel trapped. I had been so focused on the secret file, the one piece of the puzzle that could destroy everything for my family, and now here he was, standing right in front of me. I didn't move, didn't speak. My mind was scrambling, trying to piece together what had just happened, what Connor knew, what he was here for. One thing was clear, this confrontation was no longer just about revenge. It was about survival. Connor's smirk. Connor's smile was as cold as ever, his eyes gleaming with the kind of smug confidence that made my blood boil. "I knew you'd dig too deep eventually, Mackenzie," he said, his voice smooth, almost taunting. "You always were the stubborn one. Couldn't let things go, could you?" I stood up slowly, refusing to let him see how shaken I was. I had come this far. I wasn't going to let him take it from me now, not when I was so close. "What do you want, Connor?" I asked, keeping my tone as steady as I could. "I just want to make sure you understand what you're about to do." He stepped further into the room, his gaze never leaving me, because once you pull that thread, Mackenzie, there's no going back. Not for you, not for anyone in this family. His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I wasn't naive. I knew I was walking a dangerous path. But this wasn't just about my family anymore. It was about me. About reclaiming my life. And if Connor thought he could scare me off, he was sorely mistaken. The tension builds. I wasn't about to back down. Not after everything I'd uncovered. Everything I'd been through. This was my moment, and I wasn't going to let him take it from me. But as I stood there, facing my brother, the one person who had always been the perfect son, the golden child, something shifted. Something inside me told me that maybe, just maybe, Connor wasn't as untouchable as he seemed. He was just as vulnerable as the rest of us. And that's when I realized I had to push him. I had to take the first step, or I would lose everything. I reached for the file on the table, slowly, deliberately. I slid it toward him. "You want to talk about what's coming next, Connor. Then you explain this." I slammed the file open, the documents spilling out in front of him. "I know about the money. I know what you and Dad have been hiding. You think I'm the only one who's been digging?" The twist. Connor froze, his face draining of color for a split second. He quickly regained his composure. But I saw it, the flicker of fear. And that was all I needed. "You don't know what you're dealing with, Mackenzie," he said, his voice suddenly strained. "You think you've got it all figured out. You think this is just about money." His words made my stomach tighten. I had seen this side of Connor before when he was backed into a corner, when the perfect image he had built for himself started to crack. But this was something else, something darker. And it was only just beginning. "What else is there, Connor?" I asked, my voice low, deadly calm. "What are you hiding?" For a moment, there was silence. Then, Connor did something I never expected. He leaned in, his eyes locking onto mine with a look of determination. "You think this is about money. You think you've uncovered the family secret. But the truth is far worse than you could ever imagine. This isn't just about us, Mackenzie. This is about the family legacy, and I will do whatever it takes to protect it." My pulse quickened. What was he talking about? What had he done that was so much worse than money? The game shifts. Connor wasn't just playing a different game. He was rewriting the rules. But I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I had worked too hard, risked too much. The stakes were too high. There was no turning back now. I gathered my thoughts, steeling myself. I couldn't let him manipulate me again. Not this time. "What are you going to do, Connor Lock me out of the family again. Push me aside like you always do. I stepped forward, refusing to let him intimidate me any longer. You don't get to decide what's best for me. Not anymore. Connor stood there, glaring at me, his jaw clenched tight. For the first time in years, I felt like I was on equal footing with him, like I had the power to control this conversation. He seemed to hesitate, just for a moment, and that's when I saw it, the vulnerability, the cracks in his perfect facade. He wasn't the untouchable golden child anymore. He was just another person, trying to protect his secrets at any cost. You think you're the only one with leverage, Mackenzie. Think again, he said, his voice growing colder. I've already set things in motion. There's no stopping it now. The unexpected visitor. The words hit me like a slap in the face. What did he mean by that? What had he already done? My mind raced, but before I could ask, there was a loud knock at the door. My heart skipped a beat. No one else was supposed to be here. Connor looked up, his eyes narrowing as the knock came again. It was urgent. Quick, too quick to be normal. My mind spun dasta, but before I could move, the door creaked open, revealing a figure in the doorway. It was Kyle. I could see the look of panic in his eyes, his usual calm demeanor replaced by something darker. Something was wrong. Mackenzie, we need to talk. Now. Connor shot up from his chair, his face going pale. What the hell is going on? I didn't know, but I had a feeling that the moment Kyle stepped into the room, everything I thought I knew was about to come crashing down. What had Kyle found? What did he know that could change everything? And why was Connor so shaken? The answers were right in front of me, but would I survive what was coming next? The moment Kyle stepped into the room, everything shifted. The tension, thick and heavy, was suddenly cut by the urgency in his eyes. Connor, for all his bravado, froze. The smirk slipped off his face like it had never been there. We need to talk. Now. Kyle's voice was firm, but there was something behind it, something dark, something that made my stomach twist in dread. This wasn't the calm, controlled Kyle I knew. Something had happened, and I needed to know what. Connor's gaze flicked between Kyle and me, his expression growing more guarded by the second. I could tell he wasn't expecting this. Whatever Kyle had to say, it was clear that it wasn't part of the plan Connor had in mind. Kyle's revelation. I felt a cold sweat break out across my back as Kyle moved closer. His eyes never left mine, as if trying to communicate something unspoken. This wasn't just a conversation, it was a moment that would change everything. Mackenzie, Kyle began, his voice low and urgent. You need to understand something. This thing with your father. With Connor, it's bigger than you think. It's not just about money. It's about power and the truth. The truth is more dangerous than you realize. I could feel my chest tightening. What was he talking about? What truth? My thoughts were racing. Connor looked like he was holding his breath, his jaw clenched. What had Kyle found?
What do you mean? I asked, my voice trembling despite myself. What truth?
Kyle hesitated for a moment, his eyes flickering to Connor before locking back onto me. Then, with a deep breath, he finally spoke. The file you found, the one with the financial records, wasn't the full story. There's another layer to this, a much darker one. I felt a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. I knew something wasn't right. But this was something else. My mind raced as I tried to grasp what Kyle was saying. What had I missed? There's a reason your father kept those documents hidden. And there's a reason Connor has been so careful, so meticulous. You think they were just hiding money, no? They were hiding connections, alliances, things that go all the way to the top. The hidden network. Connor's eyes flicked to the door, as if he were considering making a break for it. But he stayed put. The coldness in his stare only intensified. Whatever Kyle was saying, it was shaking the ground beneath him. But why? What kind of connections? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. This was getting bigger, much bigger than I had anticipated. I had come into this thinking I was digging up family secrets, secrets about money, betrayal, greed. But this was a whole new level. Kyle turned to face Connor for a moment, his expression hardening as if daring him to stop him. Connor didn't say a word. Your father has ties with people in powerful places, people who would do anything to protect their interests. And those ties go far beyond what you saw in those files. Your family is involved in a network, one that deals in things that most people would never dream of. My head was spinning. I thought I understood what I was up against. But now I was faced with the reality that my family had been playing a much darker game. They weren't just hiding money, they were hiding influence. Power, something that had been carefully constructed over decades. And I had been blind to it. What kind of network? I asked, my voice trembling. A criminal one, Kyle said bluntly. Your father wasn't just hiding money. He was laundering it. The transactions you saw, those were part of something much bigger. Political deals, illegal investments. He's been playing a dangerous game. Mackenzie and Connor, he's part of it too. Connor's reaction. Connor's face hardened, his eyes narrowing as he stepped closer to Kyle, his voice low and threatening. You don't know what you're talking about, Connor snapped, his voice laced with venom. You think you've got it all figured out. You think you can come here and make accusations without any idea what you're dealing with. The tension in the room was suffocating. Connor was no longer the confident golden child. He was desperate, defensive, and for the first time, I saw the cracks in his armor. He wasn't invincible. Not anymore. What did you do, Connor? I demanded, stepping forward, my heart pounding in my chest. What have you been involved in? Connor's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but his mouth was a tight line. He didn't want to admit what Kyle was saying was true, but I could see it in his eyes. He knew that Kyle had him cornered. The web of deceit. Kyle was right. I had been so focused on the idea of family betrayal, of financial secrets, that I hadn't realized the full scope of what I was dealing with. I wasn't just fighting to uncover my family's lies. I was fighting against something far darker. The truth was, this wasn't just about my family's wealth. It was about their connections to a criminal underworld, to powerful people who would stop at nothing to protect their interests. And my father and brother had been right at the heart of it. You've been lying to me my entire life, I said, my voice cracking as the weight of everything hit me all at once. Not just about money, but about everything. About who you really are. About who you've been working with. Connor took a step back, his face pale now. His previous bravado was gone. But that didn't matter anymore. The damage was done. I could see it in his eyes. Now he was cornered, and he knew it. The plan crumbles. I turned to Kyle, my hands shaking. My whole life had been a lie. I had been living in a fantasy world where my family was just a little dysfunctional. But now, it was clear. This wasn't dysfunction. This was something far worse. And it wasn't just my father I had to worry about. It was everyone he had been working with. What do we do now? I asked, my voice small, almost childlike in its uncertainty. I wasn't sure what I could do anymore. But I had to do something. I couldn't just let this go. Not when I knew the truth. Not when I had the power to change it. Kyle's gaze softened, his voice quieter now. Now we take them down. We use what we have. But we have to be careful. We can't expose everything at once. This is bigger than anything you've imagined. And, if we're not careful, it will destroy us all. I looked at Connor, my heart heavy with the realization of just how deep this went. And then I turned back to Kyle, my mind racing. How far was I willing to go? What would this cost me? Before I could answer, the door slammed open again. This time, it wasn't just Connor who was in the room. It was someone else. Someone I never expected to see. Mackenzie. The voice came from the doorway, soft but undeniably present. My heart froze in my chest as I turned to face the last person I expected to see, standing in the doorway, looking at me with eyes full of regret, was my father. For a moment, the room seemed to tilt. Time slowed, the weight of everything pressing in on me. My father had been a figure of authority, someone I had looked up to despite the years of emotional neglect. But now, as I saw him standing there, something shifted. The man I had known, the man I had spent my whole life trying to understand, was gone. In his place stood someone I didn't recognize, and yet I could feel the depth of his influence pressing down on me. The revelation. I didn't say anything at first. I couldn't. My thoughts were tangled, my emotions raw. Kyle, who had been standing beside me just moments ago, shifted uncomfortably, his eyes flickering between my father and me. But my father remained calm, his presence as imposing as ever. He closed the door behind him and stepped further into the room, his eyes never leaving mine. "I should have told you the truth a long time ago," he began, his voice low and filled with a heaviness that I hadn't heard before, but I didn't know how. "You wouldn't have understood. No one would have." I shook my head, trying to piece everything together. The secrets, the lies, the game that had been played all around me. How long had he been hiding everything from me, from the very beginning? "What do you want from me now?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "After everything, after what you and Connor did, how can you stand there and act like nothing happened?" My father paused, his expression faltering for a brief moment. His face softened, the hardness in his eyes momentarily replaced by something that looked like regret. But it was too late for regret. "The power play. You don't understand, Mackenzie," my father said, his voice thick with emotion. "This isn't just about family. This isn't just about you or Connor or me. This is about a legacy, about what we've built. Everything I've done, I did it for this family, for you, for your future." I couldn't hold back the bitter laugh that escaped me. "A legacy? Is that what you're calling this mess? You've been lying to me, manipulating me, all to protect something you built on lies and corruption. And now you want me to believe that it's all for me, for my future." His eyes flickered for a moment, almost like he was searching for the right words. But there were no more words left. Everything had been said. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," my father said, almost to himself. "I thought I could protect you from the truth. But you're right. Mackenzie, I've failed you. I've failed all of you." The confrontation. I couldn't look at him anymore. The man I had once admired, the man I had tried so hard to please, was gone. In his place was someone I didn't know, someone who had buried me under the weight of his mistakes. And now, standing in front of me, he wanted me to accept his apology. No, not anymore. I had taken back my power. I wasn't going to let him use guilt to control me. "It's too late for apologies, Dad." I took a step back, feeling the sting of the truth cut deeper than any words he could say. "You don't get to decide what's best for me anymore. You don't get to use me as a pawn in your game. Not after everything." For the first time, I saw the full weight of his regret. He stepped forward, but I held up my hand, stopping him. I wasn't going to let him get closer. Not anymore. The final twist. But just as I thought the moment had passed, just as I thought I had finally pushed him away, there was another voice, Connor's. "You don't know the whole story, Mackenzie," Connor said, his voice low and full of something I couldn't quite place. Fear, desperation. You don't know what he had to do to protect this family, to protect you. I turned to face him, my chest tightening. Was he really going to try and justify everything now? I've seen enough of your protection, I snapped. And I've had enough. You can't keep hiding behind that excuse. I won't be your scapegoat anymore. Connor took a deep breath, and for a moment, I saw him as the scared little boy I once knew. The boy who had always been the golden child. The one who could do no wrong. But now, he was just another person trying to protect his secrets. And I wasn't having it. This isn't about protecting me, I continued, my voice growing more determined. This is about control. You're both trying to control me. But not anymore. I'm done being your pawn. I'm done being part of this twisted game. The breaking point. My father stood silently behind me, and for a brief moment, it seemed like everything in the room went still. The weight of my words hung in the air, filling the space between us. And then, just as I thought everything had fallen into place, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, my heart skipping a beat as I saw the name on the screen. "It's Kyle," I whispered, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I had to know what Kyle had found. Had he uncovered something else? Or was this just another step in the chaos I had set in motion? I grabbed the phone, my hands shaking as I answered. "Mackenzie," Kyle's voice came through, breathless. "You need to listen to me. I've found something else, something I didn't expect. And it's bad, really bad." My heart sank. What could possibly be worse than everything that had already happened? "What is it?" Kyle, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Mackenzie, they've been watching you, all along. Mackenzie, they've been watching you, all along." Kyle's voice echoed in my ear, sending a chill down my spine. I froze. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. I could hear my pulse pounding in my ears, the weight of the revelation sinking in. Who had been watching me? My family? Someone else? "What are you talking about, Kyle?" "Who's been watching me?" I could barely manage to say the words, the shock nearly rendering me speechless. "It's not just your family. Mackenzie," Kyle continued, his voice shaking. "Someone else has been monitoring everything you've been doing. Your emails, your phone calls, your meetings. They knew what you were uncovering." My stomach dropped as the pieces began to fall into place. The subtle glances from Connor, the cryptic messages, the sudden awareness my family seemed to have of my every move, it was all starting to make sense. And it was terrifying. "Who else?" Kyle, I demanded, my voice trembling as I clutched the phone tighter in my hand. "Who the hell is involved in this?" "The spy within." I could hear the sound of Kyle's breath on the other end of the line, a deep sigh escaping him before he spoke again. "It's bigger than you think. Mackenzie, someone inside your own circle has been feeding them information." His voice dropped to a whisper, like he was afraid someone might hear. "It's your Aunt Laura." The name hit me like a ton of bricks. Aunt Laura. The one person I had thought I could trust. The one person who had always been a steady presence in my life. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as the realization hit. What I whispered? Stunned? No, that's impossible. She's my aunt. She's always been the one person who seemed to care. I know, Kyle said quickly, trying to calm me down. "But think about it. Mackenzie, she's been close to your mom, to Connor, and now she's been feeding them information about everything you've been doing, every step, every plan. They've known what you were up to the whole time, and now they've been setting you up." The web of deceit unravels. I didn't know what to feel anymore. My father, my brother, my aunt, all of them involved in something so much bigger than I could have imagined. The lies, the manipulation. It was all part of a plan that had been in motion long before I ever started digging. And now, I was the one trapped in the middle of it. I glanced over at my father and Connor, who were standing across from me in the room. My father's face was impassive, but Connor's gaze kept flicking nervously between me and the door, as if waiting for something to happen. The tension was thick in the air. I had been living in a carefully crafted illusion, and now that illusion was crumbling before my eyes. Everything I thought I knew about my family, about the life I had tried to build, was a lie, and I was too deep into this to turn back. The confrontation. My hands shook as I held the phone to my ear, trying to steady my breathing. This wasn't just about uncovering family secrets anymore. This was about survival. This was about protecting myself from people I had trusted for my entire life. "What do I do now, Kyle?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What do you want me to do?" He paused for a long moment, like he was weighing his options. When he spoke again, his voice was urgent. "You need to expose them. Mackenzie, you need to get ahead of this before they take you down. They've been playing you for a fool. But you can still beat them. I'll help you, but we need to act fast." I felt my heart race as the words sank in. Expose them. Take control. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had a plan. I had the power, but it wouldn't be easy. I couldn't trust anyone, not even Kyle, until I knew I had all the pieces. The last gamble. I turned to face my father and Connor. They were still standing there, like statues, the air thick with the weight of everything that had just been said. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had no reason to be. "You've been lying to me," I said, my voice low but full of conviction. "Both of you. This whole time. And now, it's over." Connor stepped forward, trying to regain control, but I wasn't going to let him. Not anymore. "You don't know what you're dealing with, Mackenzie," he sneered, his arrogance still clinging to him, despite the fear in his eyes. "You think you can just expose us and walk away scot-free? You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." But I had a secret weapon now, one they didn't see coming. My hands trembled as I reached into my pocket and pulled out the phone that had changed everything. It was a recording of our conversation, the one where Connor and my father had inadvertently revealed everything I needed to know. "I've already recorded everything," I said, my voice steady, every word, every lie, "and I'm not afraid to share it with the world." The final choice. The room fell silent as my father and Connor stared at me. I could see the panic in their eyes now, the realization that they had underestimated me. I wasn't the weak, invisible daughter anymore. I was the one holding all the cards. "You can either come clean," I said, my voice hard, "or I expose everything. Your empire, your secrets, it all comes crashing down. You decide." For a moment, it looked like my father was going to speak. But then he hesitated, his gaze flicking to Connor. There was a shift in the room, something unspoken. And in that moment, I realized something that sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't just about money or power anymore. This was about something much deeper. Just as I thought the moment had reached its peak, my phone buzzed again. It was another message from Kyle, but this one was different. The message simply read, "I'm sorry, Mackenzie. They know you're coming." The floor dropped out from under me as I realized what he was saying. My family wasn't just hiding the truth. They had set a trap for me. And now, it was too late to turn back. "I'm sorry, Mackenzie. They know you're coming." The words hit me like a freight train. I stood there, staring at the text, my heart pounding in my chest. My legs felt weak, the air thick and heavy as if the room itself had been crushed by the weight of what Kyle had just revealed. I'd been played. This entire time, I thought I was in control, thought I was about to expose the truth, tear down the empire my family had built on lies. But now it felt like I was the one being set up. Connor's eyes flicked to me. He saw the change in my expression, the panic, the realization that everything was slipping through my fingers. He knew what I'd just read, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Not the smug arrogance I was used to, but real fear. Something I could use. The final betrayal. I looked at my father, who stood in silence behind Connor, his face unreadable. My world was crumbling in front of me. I had thought I had the upper hand, thought I could expose them, make them pay for everything they'd put me through. But now, the game had changed. The trap had already been set, and I was walking right into it. "What did you do?" "Dad," I said, my voice shaky but determined. "What did you and Connor set up for me?" My father remained silent, but I could see the flicker of guilt in his eyes. And that was all the confirmation I needed. He knew. He knew everything that was coming, and he had kept me in the dark for so long. My whole life, I had been a pawn in his game, but no more. The decision. Connor stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous, but I didn't flinch. I wasn't going to be intimidated by him anymore. "You should have listened to me, Mackenzie," he said, a hint of venom in his tone. "You've been digging into things you don't understand. This isn't something you can just walk away from. This is our life, our legacy. And if you think you can tear it down without consequences, you're wrong." I stepped back, the cold sting of his words fueling my resolve. I had no choice but to finish this. The truth was out there now, and if I had to burn the world down to expose it, I would. "You think I care about your legacy?" I spat back. "I care about the truth, and I'm done being your pawn. Connor, you can't control me anymore." The final move. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the phone in my hand, the recording of our conversation still playing in my mind. I had all the evidence I needed, but now, it wasn't just about exposing them. It was about survival. I had to stay one step ahead, outsmart them, outmaneuver them. If I didn't, they would take me down before I had a chance to act. I turned to Kyle, who had remained on the phone with me. "Kyle, I need you to run a check," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "I need to know exactly who's behind this, who else is involved." "Mackenzie, you're walking into a war zone," Kyle warned, but I could hear the hesitation in his voice. He knew what I was up against now. He had known all along, but there was no turning back. "I don't have a choice," I replied. "I'll do whatever it takes. I have to take them down." The unexpected ally. Just as I was about to turn and face my family again, I heard a knock at the door. It was quick, almost urgent, like someone was rushing to get in. Before I could react, the door swung open.
And there, standing in the doorway, was Aunt Laura.
Her face was pale, her eyes darting between me and my father. She didn't speak immediately, but I could see the tension in her posture. She knew everything, and now, it seemed, she had finally come to make her move. "Mackenzie," Aunt Laura said, her voice trembling slightly, "I know what you're doing. I know what you've found, and I need to warn you." The final betrayal. My mind raced as I stared at Aunt Laura. I had trusted her. She had always been the one person I thought would stand by me. But now, everything I had known about my family seemed to be crumbling. And here she was, standing in front of me like she was about to reveal something that could shatter whatever was left of my fragile world. "Warn me about what I demanded," my voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. "You're a part of this, aren't you?" Aunt Laura flinched at the accusation, but her expression softened as she stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. She wasn't here to fight me. She wasn't here to protect anyone else. She was here to confess. "I didn't want you to find out. Mackenzie," she whispered, her eyes locked on mine, filled with regret. "I never wanted it to go this far, but it's too late now." The truth comes out. The words she was about to say felt like they would tear me apart. What had she done? What had she been a part of? I couldn't process it. I wanted to scream, but I stood there, frozen, waiting for her to finish. Your father and Connor, they've been running everything, Aunt Laura continued, her voice shaking. But I couldn't just stand by anymore. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't know how to stop it. I tried. Mackenzie, I tried to protect you, but they wouldn't let me. My heart pounded in my chest. The pieces were falling into place now. The manipulation, the lies, the webs they had woven around me. Aunt Laura hadn't been a victim. She had been complicit. She had helped them cover up their sins. You've been part of this the whole time, I asked, my voice thick with disbelief. How could you do this to me? Just as Aunt Laura opened her mouth to answer, the door suddenly slammed open again. And this time, there was no warning. Standing in the doorway was a man I didn't recognize. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a stern, hard expression on his face. He wasn't just some stranger. I could feel the power emanating from him. And then, he spoke, his voice like gravel. I'm afraid it's too late for any of you.